Thanks so much for coming at 8:30 in the morning. Punishing. I'm really surprised to see there's so many creative people up at this time. I mean, I don't ask guys kind of to lie in and kind of take life easily, I don't know. So I'm Stef, and I'm really pleased to be here. I'm so pleased to see a fan out in London. Pretty amazing. I'm actually wearing the t-shirt now, not because I'm a part of the team, but because I poured an entire cup of coffee over me just now. I was wearing this beautiful coloured t-shirt, like very appropriate to the event, and then it kind of went brown, and I don't think that was as appropriate. So yes, colour is the theme, and when Vicky said, "Oh, come and speak about colour," I kind of felt, well, actually my initial reaction was like, colour, typography. I don't know if any of you are typographers, but my first thought was the colour of type. The colour of type is like the density of the words on the page and how they fit together and how they're readable and elegant together, not red, blue, green. And then that got me thinking, well, maybe I should think about colour in a more abstract way in the presentation I might give today, and the colour of variety, I guess. That's what I want to talk to you about today. I'm a hacker, a designer, a technologist. I've done lots of things. And my rule is very simple, and I live by this rule: create something every day. It's something that started at a point in my life that was very sad, and it was like one of those strange moments that is both awful and brilliant at the same time. When I was at university, was suddenly admitted to hospital with a small brain tumour. Not one of those ones that grows and kills you, but one that was just in a bad place. And I very nearly died. It was really touch and go. If modern medicine hadn't been there to pick me up, then I wouldn't be around. And waking up in a hospital bed, having suddenly realised that you're not as immortal as you thought you were, and maybe going out clubbing all the time isn't what you should be spending your time on, I just plucked this out of nowhere, and I just started sketching in a book about all the things I wanted to make, all the things I wanted to do, a record label, a design company. I wanted to make software products, games, all sorts of stuff that I was interested in. And I thought, what would a life of variety be like? And it would be down to this, creating something every day. So I've pretty much stuck to this, and it's going on 18 years, I think, something like that. I mean, yeah, you have the occasional day off, and maybe you don't quite make something that day. But I just thought I'd talk to you a little bit about that process, and about what that's done, and what that means, and maybe you can pick something up from it. And it's not a neat presentation, because I have no idea what I'm talking about. Quite literally, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I've done this once before. Because I'm a hacker, I'm always making these things. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to make a talk randomizer? And so I programmed my talk. And this format is something I'm working on at the moment. You're seeing it for the second time ever. It might go horribly wrong. It's called Deck Roulette. And the idea is that I've got a folder, and I've put a load of images in the folder, and I've got a text file, and each line of the text file is an idea of something I care about, or I know about, or I could talk about. And then I've written a little bit of software that then just looks at that folder and that file, and then it picks stuff randomly. And how many slides do I have today? I have 43 random slides. So we are time-boxed. So we have 20 minutes, and I'm just going to talk through a kind of non-linear narrative. So you know how most talks people come up and give you this very neat definition of their life and their work, kind of beginning and end. And I don't know about you, but my life is much more messy than that, and it essentially feels random. So I thought a random talk might be more appropriate. So please bear with me. This might go wrong. Okay. Oh, that's a nice way to start. The little big idea. So people call me a hacker because I do lots of prototypes, and so this idea of creating something every day, I often at a weekend or at a hack day, presumably some of you are familiar with the idea of a hack day, I like to make these tiny little prototypes from an idea. So I'll be standing in the shower and I'll come up with some kind of little inkling. I've got one at the moment that I haven't done, so I'll tell you that one. You can mute people on Twitter, and Twitter has now let you do that via their API. So it would now be possible for me to make a little tool that would allow groups of people to selectively mute the same people. So you could have a list of people that you want to mute, and then I could subscribe to your list of muted people, and you could essentially solve a bunch of those trolling problems just by this little thing. So I might make that one day. But you see the little big idea there? That's a little tiny thing about, I could knock that up in an afternoon. I could just sit there on the kitchen table and start making it and code it. And a lot of people, when they think of an idea like that, they start wondering how they would go around building it. What I try to do is I try to narrow the idea down to the bare minimum, the tiniest little deliverable component of it, and then just go for it. Just start it. I think a lot of people get stuck in this stage where you have to think through the meaning of it all, like, oh, mute list, what would that do? Oh, wouldn't I get into lots of trouble with people? I better have a conversation with some people about that. And then you email some folk, and then it's a few weeks, and then your motivation kind of evaporates. And then maybe you do it, but then people talk to you, like, oh, how was that idea going? Oh, I didn't do it, I was really busy, and I was moving house, and it didn't happen. Whereas if you just sit down with this tiny little thing, you get it started, and you get it in front of people. And the thing is, big ideas can come from that. So I've started companies that started from that little tiny nub, and then have turned into like 50-person companies. From the same process, from that same little afternoon hacking. Clicker. Okay. And it doesn't matter if you fail. Because if you're doing a little experiment all the time, if you're doing lots of little experiments, if you tell people that all you're doing is a little experiment to test out an idea, you're not making this grand promise. You're not saying, this is an amazing new business idea and I'm going to dedicate the next 3 years of my life to this problem. What you're saying is you're kind of playing with these little experiments all the time. So I've really learned that the getting used to not feeling so bad about things just stopping and failing has really helped me get on to the next idea. When I was up in Birmingham, I lived there for about 10 years, I set up a design company. I'm sure probably some designers in the room. And you say to everyone around you, I'm setting up a design company. It's going to be this amazing design company. And you kind of put everything into it. You put, I paid for it on a credit card. I was like backing it with personal debt. And when you're so convicted of an idea, you can really stick at something way past the sell-by date. And I worked on that little agency for way longer than I should have done. And someone should have just sat me down and said, Stef, like, I know this design company is really cool and everything. You're winning some awards and everyone's giving you feedback about it, but it's not paying the rent very well. And maybe you should go and do something else. But that option isn't often presented to you as an option. It's presented as a total failure of character. And since then, I've got really used. I found it really helpful just one day giving that up, stopping. I just shut the company one day, and it was such a relief. And then I realised that actually, by doing these tiny experiments and being more involved in the early stage and saying I'm just trying these things, I didn't have that kind of weight of public expectation on what I was going to output from my work. So getting used to failing was really good. But this is an observation my daughter came up with. It does matter if you win. So it doesn't matter if you fail, it doesn't matter if you win. The thing is, people like to celebrate successes, and you should do that. You shouldn't be aiming at this failure is wonderful thing, because it's kind of rough, Shutting a company is awful, really awful experience. But getting used to the early light failure is probably the way to solve that. Oh, and then I got back to the craft. I stopped doing the agency and I focused on trying to build products. Because running an agency, you're kind of a manager. You can end up as the manager. And that's abstracted away from the creative output, the creative work. And so my instinct at that time was to stop writing proposals and doing pitches and selling things to people and get right back to writing code. And I love I love these kinds of places where you get inventors and kind of strange people around who are doing weird things with wearable stitched circuit boards or whatever. You know, that's cool, that's great. And the craft, I think, is something that's really come back round, where once it was kind of viewed as you know, kind of manual work. That's how you don't want to do manual work. Don't do metal work at school. Go and do, you know, maths or something. And actually now there seems to be a real appreciation of the kind of craft of making things. And so that instinct to move away from the kind of abstract and get back to really hard up against the metal, I think has been really beneficial for me to keep up this kind of rate of making lots of things. And I found it really, really fun. Fun is good. This is a book I had when I was a kid. How funny. I dug this out of the attic just the other week. Make and program your own robots. How amazing was that? And this was in Lego. And that was like the kind of class of computer we had back then. Right? Nutty. But I remember my dad used to bring these things home for me all the time. And it really inspired me to kind of play with these things. And I think it's only now I realised like what he was doing. And so now I have kids. I have 4 little ones, and in my home environment, yes, I have 4 little ones. I'm 36. They're 1, 3, 5, and 7. So my home environment is reasonably whirlwind-like, should we say? But I'm doing this with them because you know, there's so much cool stuff in the world now, and the ability to produce like robotic stuff has got to the point where you can just buy this stuff for like tens of pounds, and you can make like a DIY synth, or you can make a little robot that goes around on the floor. And so I think we're at a really interesting time for playfulness and technology. So I'm determined to try and do things with young people. I think that's really crucial, that if you're a technologist or a designer, spend a little bit of time with kids. It's really surprising what comes up. You get a real new inkling into your own process. So I've become more playful just by the fact of having little children to play with and do these little things with. I've not made anything yet that turns into business from this. This is kind of side project territory. But you never know. There are people making businesses out of mashing up educational technology and robotics and Internet of Things. There's something there. Monsters. So the other thing I do with my kids, monsters, I got it. It's going well today. I love drawing monsters. I kind of don't really see a big difference between writing code and drawing pictures. It's quite a strange thing to say. I think of my process around writing software as sketching the code. So you know how an architect will build a building, and you know, you often think of architecture as very, very rigid process. It has to be exactly right. And if you apply the same thing to your software, that's those mega corporate business systems that banks have got, you know, the hundreds of people working on them. But my approach is this little hacky, sketchy, doesn't matter if it breaks kind of coding. And it's not software engineering. It's not making something that will last. It's experimenting. And for me, monsters, my little creative outlet. This is on the wall in my home. And so on the kitchen table in the morning, I'll maybe be coding something, and then I'll be drawing a little monster, and the kids will just be copying the monsters. It's quite strange because I'm there coding and drawing monsters at the same time. And so this is a little project I did where it was more than one. I think it was about one a day for a month. I did. This was my create something every day for the month of September. And now everybody knows me as someone who draws monsters, and I think I've just got a commission to do monster drawing. What? I don't know. I didn't know anything about drawing monsters, and now I do. Draw monsters, it's good fun. And paying attention to the toys, so that joyfulness and laughter that comes from doing something that looks a bit silly, I think actually can result in quite good inventions. If I look back at some of the companies I started, some of the projects I've been part of, often it's paying attention to the thing that makes you laugh that is the interesting bit. So the toys that people play with, and I'd class this place as full of toys. Paying attention to these things in the room, these little experimental, playful devices, I think things can emerge from that if you allow yourself to kind of toy around with things a little bit. So Yeah, a principle I have is just to pay attention. When I see someone playing with something and laughing about something we've done, or they've done, there might be an inkling there for a project. And constraint is your friend. The Casio keyboard. A lot of people say that Casio keyboards were very limiting in the amount of sounds you could get out of it. And you'd probably be right. But the 808 synth was kind of the bedrock of a lot of dance music, and it only had a few sounds on it. It didn't do very much, but it spawned like huge cultural change. And I love those little constraining things because you don't have that creative problem of the kind of blank canvas. And so one of my constraints that I like to give myself when I'm doing my create something every day is the day. You only have a day, so whatever you fit into the day is whatever you fit into the day. So by limiting by time, you actually end up with these very simple, easily deliverable ideas. And so that time constraint, rather than giving yourself a week or a month or whatever to follow through on an idea, sit down at a coffee table and just do it over a couple of hours and have a conversation afterwards. I think we were talking about coffee shops. Coffee shops are great because you only have so much time and you can't drink that many cups of coffee. You probably could, but you end up shaking. So constraint for me is my friend. I like constraints and giving myself constraints. I'll go on. Do all the things. I've come off the rails on this one. Do all the things. What does that mean, Stef? I guess this comes back to my that kind of variety, and a lot of people through their career as they progress, you get increasingly narrowed. The kind of career progression seems to be a process of narrowing rather than widening. So at school you kind of widen, and then after school there's this kind of funnel right down to like some kind of perceived target for where you want to be. And for me, I kind of rail against that a little bit because I want to be wide, I want to try a variety of things. And the problem with that is that if you don't become an expert in one particular thing, how do you get any value out of anything you do? If you're kind of okay at a lot of stuff, doesn't that just mean that you're not great at anything? And that's a real big challenge that I have because, as you've seen, I do lots of different things. I've started a record label, a design company, a video company, now I've got my new company that starts companies, it's all very meta. And a challenge I have is that with the vast array of things available to you as someone who can code and design, how do you spend your time? What do you choose? You've got to choose something. And so I've chosen early stage experimentation as the thing that I'm going for at the moment. But a time has to come when you have to pick. And my process over the last few years has been kind of widening and narrowing repeatedly. So try lots of little early stage ideas, and then at some point you can see there's a signal that will come back from one of them. So if I think back to my previous company, it was called A-Frame, and it's a video collaboration platform for people who make TV and film. But it started from a little hack in a co-working space. And I had a video on the screen, a YouTube video, and I'd observed that it was hard to find a moment in a video. If you were trying to look for the moment that Elvis hit the stage within an hour-long piece of video, you basically have to watch it until you get to the right bit. And I thought that was kind of silly. Surely someone should kind of index these videos. And so I made a tiny little tool that just put words on the timeline of a YouTube video. It was done, it took a couple of hours. But that turned into a patent around the business process of adding in metadata to video content rapidly. And then we raised investment, and then I moved to London and built a team. And then 3 years later, we've got like 50 people in the team and like a VC backing us, and it's all on that startup route. But I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have started that company if I'd remained wide. So trying lots of things and doing lots of collaborations is great, it's good for a time, but then the time has to come when do all the things does no longer apply, and you have to pick, and you have to kind of kill your darlings. And I had to have really hard meetings with people I cared about, saying, look, I've started this little project with you, I've really enjoyed it, but now I have to go. And it was rough, really rough, because you're seeing potential over here, here, and here. How do you know which one of the ideas is going to go? How did I know that the bit of keywords on a title in a video would turn into a 50-person company and so on, but it could have been the citizen journalism project I was doing, or whatever. There had a few of them. But at some point you have to go with the signal, and the signal is some kind of external validation that the ideas that you're working on, this particular idea, has got some legs, and then you have to go all in on it. As far as I'm concerned, I think you have to. So I'm in this kind of wide stage again at the moment, and then January will come and I'll be like doing one idea again, probably. They do it twice. Awesome. That's a mistake. Okay. Oh, here's Innie. This is one of my little ones. And we do silly things like face painting and playing. Hanging out with kids is just totally fun. If you don't have any kids of your own, go and borrow some. Vicky, you have to just tell me when to stop, because it's essentially infinite. Okay, so this is a Hack Day project. Now, Hack Day is the kind of perfect environment for someone like me, and I would think a few of you guys would have been or should go to a Hack Day. And essentially, it's a bunch of people getting together around a topic for 24 hours to 54 hours, usually kind of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and there'll be some kind of theme. And the idea is that each of the people coming kind of arrives without much of an idea about how they'd approach the theme, dynamically form a little team around some kind of nub of an idea, and then co-create something together during their time, and then demo it on the Sunday or whatever it is, and then some winners are picked, and then everyone goes home. And it's a lovely process around kind of really rapid team forming and kind of prototyping with this tension of this kind of presentation at the end. So you have to deliver something. It's that constraint I was talking about. And this is the data necklace. This was a one-day hack. It's hard to see on this projector, but this is a visualization of my wife's Twitter feed, analysed for the word love over time. And so the length of the keyword, the length of these beads corresponds to the number of tweets in a 5-day period. And this length here is the number of times you use the word love or lovely or loving. And then along the side of each bead is like one of the most popular tweets during that time. It's like a 21st century locket. And I'd never done any laser cutting before. Yeah, I just kind of came up with this idea of, I don't know, I want to make some jewellery today. I don't know. I think a lot of people don't realise you can just go, I've got this idea, and just think through how to do it in the space of time. And now people think of me as a jewellery designer. I'm not a jewellery designer. Well, I guess I am, but not really. It was a one-day hack. And this was more like a comment about data being wearable, and data being a thing that you could use to form into an object. And I really enjoy these kind of creative art hacks, because it's not a product, it's an art, I guess. And if you're a designer and you hear about the word Hack Day, it can feel like that's a place for all the technology people, all the coders. Don't think that. They are absolutely desperate for designers to be in the room, because designers are storytellers, and that tells a story, whereas at Hack Day you get lots of developers who kind of can do cool tech stuff, but don't have a point for it. And it's really frustrating to be in the room when you're like, could you just find a point around this cool thing? I mean, it looks great, but... So if you're a designer, please do think about going to a Hack Day, because it is about experimentation and playing with things, and you can end up with some really good portfolio stuff that, you know, people talk about you with others. Anyway, one more and then I'll wrap up. Okay. Makefulness, there we go, I ended on that one. Makefulness is the word that I describe, it describes all of this, really. You must all be familiar with the idea of flow. When you're in that flow state, you're making something, and then you start making it, and then you look up and it's lunchtime, and you don't know where those 3 hours have gone, it's just disappeared. That's the perfect state for me. It's kind of what I strive for. If you can get into a flow state, then you're operating at your apex. But there's a state beyond that where if you can kind of find a way that you're able to just be in that making state on an ongoing basis, maybe a few days in a row, that's what I mean about makefulness. It's being in the right environment with the right people working on the right stuff, and it just feeling like you're perfectly lined up with what you want to do. And this is like the ultimate thing that I aim for with all of this process. So when I create something every day, it's really trying to get to this point where I'm making this all the time. Right, so I'll just do this next. So I have a company. I thought I might mention that. You have to make some money somehow. And my company, we make companies. Yay for that! It's a bit abstract, but basically this hacking stuff, once you get good at it and you know how you can test an idea quickly, then that's a process that's quite valuable. And so a Makeshift, in a 12-month period, I started 50 code bases in that year. 12 of them turned into little hacks, and each of them was like a business proposition that could turn into a product or a business. Do one of those every month, and then just test them and see if people like them, and see if you get any good feedback, and throw them away if they don't. But if they do get good feedback, then invest on them by putting kind of three-person team on an idea for 3 months, just to validate it. It's like early stage startup thinking, except in parallel, which is quite hard. But the idea there is to just really test out an idea. Can you get an idea from a sketch to being something that's got revenue and is a real business? And from those 12 things, we've made 2 businesses, and they're spinning out now as separate companies. And I have one more in the bag that might turn into a thing. But yes, Makeshift is kind of an invention studio where we try to turn early stage ideas into business propositions. So that's how I make money. That was a reminder of my idea, create something every day. That's what I live by, and it might be something you might want to think about doing. It's certainly had a big effect on my life.